Hi, my name is Amy Ortiz, and I'm going to be discussing my reasons for wanting to become a professional interpreter in conjunction with my professional goals after completion of the program. So one of the many reasons I want to become a professional interpreter are because of my father. My father is actually legally blind, and he was able to teach me so much growing up because I had to be his eyes at a very, very young age. One thing I learned with having a father who is of disabilities was empathy and being aware and being very thoughtful and clear with my words, which I find that is very, very important to have, especially working with someone who is of the disabled circumstances, because I've learned that a lot of the things that we take for granted as people who are sighted are there's the fact that when you see a bump in the road, you usually walk around it. But if with someone who's blind and you're guiding them, you have to mention every crack on the floor, every bump, every speed bump that they're about to fall into, every ramp when they're going down to cross the street. You have to explain the most simplest things that I feel we just take for granted. So that was something I learned a lot. Also, with being an empathetic person, with learning that there's so many people with different scenarios, different circumstances, and to understand them in a way of saying, I understand where you're coming from and I'm willing to help, and I'm more than willing to help you in any way possible and be here for you, is something I learned with having a father who is a disability. So one day my father mentioned to me about becoming an interpreter, and I didn't think much of it. I just kept it in the back of my mind and I left it there. As time went on, at the age of 14, I was invited to a church service, and I saw a woman signing the entire sermon, which was absolutely amazing to me. I immediately was captivated. I was held on to that language, and I started to teach myself sign language. I had books. I went on YouTube. I went on vlogs. I looked up websites. I went everywhere just trying to learn as much sign language as I could. I actually was practicing some signs at school in high school, and I had a professor that actually took ASL in college, and he gave me all of his resources. He gave me a whole bunch of textbooks that actually had CDs and DVDs inside of them, so you can actually study while watching a video and reading the book at the same time, which is good because it's a visual language, so it's better to see it up front in that way, in a visual setting, of course. So that was one of the main things that sparked that wanting of becoming an interpreter. As time went on, I was able to receive a job at the New Victory Theater, where I was first introduced to the deaf community. I actually had no idea that there was such a big deaf community and the importance of the deaf community. And so I was able to finally indulge in that group and learn what it was just like to be around them, the way that they communicated, how it just flowed when they would sign. And there was so much I knew I hadn't learned yet. But it was also very interesting to find the fact that in a theater, in an off-Broadway theater, there was interpretation. It was so interesting and opened my mind than just seeing an interpreter. Usually you see an interpreter on the news interpreting the weather or any crisis going on. But for the first time, I've seen an interpreter in the arts, and I thought that was such an amazing thing because I never even knew that it even existed. So it was so nice to see that there are many other outlets, and not even just outlets, but there's many other avenues to take interpreting than many like to think. So I love that I was able to see interpreting in the deaf community within the arts community, which I had no idea before at all. As time went on, I transferred to LaGuardia Community College and continued to pursue ASL interpreting, which I went into the Deaf Studies program. And my main professors named John Collins really made a huge impact on me, especially with him being not only a teacher of the deaf, but actually being a deaf professor, showed me so much about the deaf community's pride and how much he held on to that pride as being a deaf man, and how he had so much respect and he wanted to educate so much. He was always teaching us about being an ally for the deaf, working with the deaf, being there as your supporter, not just trying to have a job or not just trying to do one thing or the other. It's more of there's a hole in this group that needs this help and needs this support that is lacking. So it was so amazing that I was able to see that in my professors, especially my professors whom were deaf, which also spiked my interest in wanting to become an interpreter. Their passion and their pride for this language and this group and this community was something that really sparked my continuation into actually wanting to go into the interpreting program. one of the many reasons I think goals I have after completion of the program are to interpret at church. One reason, because I find that this is a very important avenue that has not been providing that equal access that the deaf deserve. Because, you know, I saw it in the arts, and that transferred, like, hey, if it's in the arts, maybe I can go into a religious setting. Maybe I could look at it in a religious arena that I can provide that equal access, because personally I find that very important to me. And I feel that a lot of times it's not fair that many deaf individuals, compared to hearing individuals, we can go into a church or a synagogue wherever we want. If we don't feel comfortable, we can leave because we have that equal access of communication and understanding. Whereas a deaf person, if there's no interpretation, they can't make that decision for themselves. It's kind of like, oh well, I have to just walk out, and I can't indulge in something, and I can't experience this area of living because I don't have that equal access and that immediate avenue of communication, which I find is very unfair, which I would love to provide after completion of the program. My last two reasons of wanting to become of completion of the program, my goals, have to do with educational. So I am a tutor and a note taker at LaGuardia Community College for the deaf. One of the main things I've noticed with working with the deaf and being a tutor is that there is an extreme low level of English literacy and grammar within deaf members of the community, and it really breaks my heart because I find that this is something that came so easily to me growing up. Reading and writing was something that I never really struggled with, but the fact that they want to learn to read and write, and these are adults, these are young adults that are really struggling with how to put grammar because they had language so much later in their lives, and to see the importance of having language at such an early age and teaching a child literacy, I find is very important, which is something I would love to indulge in afterwards. I would love to explore either teaching for the deaf or being an interpreter for an educational setting. I find that would be something I will be very interested in, because just like as an educational interpreter, if you can't explain a concept in interpreting, then you can't really teach it either. So they kind of both go hands in hand, which is why I would love to explore those two avenues and those two things when involving with the deaf community, with either helping with literacy and development, and also with just signing any subject matter and providing that equal access in every class, like how I have that equal access and that immediate communication in every class. I want to provide that as an interpreter in an educational setting to another student who happens to be deaf or hard of hearing. So those are my many reasons for wanting to become a professional interpreter, and also my goals after completion of the program. Thank you very much. I hope to hear from you soon. Bye.